Welcome to Unpacking Brain Drama. I am Pratiti Pathak, and I am your host on this amazing journey, self-discovery, self-empowerment, self-motivation discovery that we are on together. I'm going to be talking about something that I think is going to resonate with so many of us because we've been on this whole entire month, we've been talking about being mentally tough and pushing through, right? We're doing Puke and Rally in our book club this month, and mental toughness isn't what you think it is. And I think a lot of times we tend to think it's like, be strong, toughen up. And I think today we're just going to dive into this topic because I think it's deeply misunderstood in our culture. And honestly, something that many high achievers, entrepreneurs, leaders, parents, and even us coaches, right? We get it wrong for years. I know, at least I'm speaking for myself when it comes to this. And that is the topic of mental toughness, and specifically why mental toughness isn't what most people think it is. This episode is inspired through this book that we continue to read in our book club, which is Puke and Rally by Dr. Rob Bell. And the deeper conversations we've had has been all around resilience and pressure and recovery, right? Perspective, and how people keep moving forward through difficult moments in life. I know for myself, I've had to move through many difficult moments, right? Even the book that I just was a co-author in is all about that. The whole entire book is about how we broke through what we were going through, right? That's what I talk about all the time. Grow through what you go through, because somewhere along the way, many of us were taught tough. We were taught mental toughness meant pushing through no matter what, right? In my book, I talk about, I didn't even know what grief was. I didn't even know the word grief. I literally just shoved everything down and called it strength. And I think that's what so many of us are led to believe, that it's about pushing through no matter what, right? Never slowing down. Don't cry, right? Don't rest. Don't ask for help, right? Suppressing emotions. That's what I did for many years, and pretend everything's fine. Raise your hand if you can relate to that, right? And while that may look strong from the inside, but internally, or from the outside rather, but internally, most of the time it creates exhaustion. It creates burnout, anxiety, emotional shutdown. So many of us, I think, feel disconnected when we do that. And then over time, it just builds up resentment. That's at least what I've seen, experienced for myself personally. It's what I have watched other people go through, my clients, and the nervous system, right? That actually never feels safe when we do any of that. So today I want to unpack a little bit of a different perspective, a healthier perspective, hopefully for most of us, and more sustainable perspective, because I don't believe mental toughness is about becoming harder, right? Actually, I think it's more about becoming more intentional under pressure, even softer in so many ways. We've been taught that we've been taught mental toughness the wrong way, is what I really think. I think a lot of people confuse mental toughness with emotional suppression, especially with high performers, right? Especially with entrepreneurs, especially with people who had no choice but to survive difficult things. I can attest to that all day, every day. And we learned this very early, right? Keep going. Don't complain. Be strong. Toughen up. What is it called? Toughen up, buttercup. Dust yourself off and try again. Handle it. Get over it. And listen, I'm not saying there's no value in that, okay? There is lots of value in perseverance, okay? There is value in discipline. There is value in learning how to move through discomfort, but there's a massive difference between resilience and emotional self-abandonment. Okay. Some people aren't mentally tough. They're emotionally disconnected. Some people aren't resilient. They're just exhausted. Okay. And that's an important distinction, because if your version of strength requires you to constantly ignore yourself, your emotions, your body, your needs, your limits, eventually something starts breaking down. And that's something, maybe it's physically, you start breaking down. Maybe emotionally, you start breaking down. Maybe relationally. Can anybody agree with that one? Yes. Maybe spiritually. I can tell you things that I've gone through that I've had to suppress. It challenged me spiritually. And the hardest part, a lot of high achievers. I always use that because sometimes we think that when we're doing really good, we're high achievers, we're high functioning. Okay. A lot of high achievers get rewarded for unhealthy coping mechanisms. Okay. People praise the grind. They go, look how well they're doing. They've gone through this terrible thing, but look how good they're doing. They're just working it out, right? People praise overworking, right? We get rewarded for working ourselves into the ground to the point we're in burnout and we're like having a nervous breakdown, right? They praise being constantly available. They praise sacrificing yourself for productivity. Meanwhile, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, you're emotionally reactive, you're disconnected from joy. Heck, you're disconnected from yourself, unable to rest without feeling guilty, right? That's not mental toughness. That's survival mode. It's a great place to be for a moment, but so many times we stay there. And survival mode may help you survive a season. It is never meant to become your identity. You can't stay there, right? This isn't something that you can just do over lengthy periods of time. So here's the thing. I feel like mental toughness, the real mental toughness, is more about emotional flexibility. Real mental toughness is actually emotional flexibility, right? It's the ability to experience emotions without becoming consumed by them, right? It's the ability to feel disappointment without making it mean your life is over, right? Because it's not, right? To feel the fear without letting the fear make all your decisions, right? Feel the rejection without rejecting yourself. Okay. You get to feel the pressure without abandoning the values. That's toughness. And honestly, that takes way more strength than pretending that you're fine all the time. Mental tough people, mentally tough people still feel all the feels, the uncomfortable ones, the grief, the fear, the sadness, the anxiety, the frustration, the overwhelm, right? The uncertainty, right? We all feel that. We don't necessarily need to stay there. And we don't just let those emotions completely drive the vehicle for us, right? We have to learn how to pause. I speak a lot about pausing. We have to learn how to pause so we can observe and regulate and then respond intentionally. And this is what keeps us aligned, right? This is what aligns so deeply with all of the work that I've been doing for myself, on myself, with myself, and that I teach all around intentional living and awareness, right? Because it has to start with the pause and observing. It's the only way we can become aware and then intentionally live. But most people are not responding consciously, right? They're reacting automatically. They're living from conditioned emotional patterns. That's the autopilot, the same thoughts, the same feelings, right? The same fear. the same emotional loop that we get stuck in, and the same protective behaviors that aren't actually benefiting us, right? And then applies pressure, right? And then like life will keep just applying that pressure on us. And then suddenly all those unconscious patterns rise to the top. They rise to the surface, and then we lead from there, right? Pressure reveals that programming that's inside of us. One of those powerful truths I've ever learned in this life, right, is this: pressure reveals the programming. When you're under pressure, that's when you react. And when you take notice, how am I automatically reacting to certain things in my life? That's where you will see, because the pressure will reveal those patterns for you, right? When life feels calm, it's easy to think that we're fine, we're healed, we're doing good, right? It's easy to think that we're patient, intentional, grounded, emotionally regulated. But pressure, that exposes what's really going on. It really exposes what's going on underneath everything, right? Stress reveals your habits. Conflict reveals your triggers. Uncertainty reveals your attachments. Disappointment reveals your expectations, right? Fear will reveal your belief systems. And this is why awareness matters so much. I know I kind of pound it into you guys every single week, because under pressure, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our conditioning, right? That's the fear, if you've heard it that way. That's why two people can experience the exact same situation and respond completely differently. One person spirals, another person pauses. For me, I was the spiral. And I always wondered, how are you being so calm? I'm freaking out, right? But that was my conditioning. That was my conditioning. That was my pattern, right? One person shuts down, right? And the other person reacts impulsively. Right. So everything is, no, one person shuts down and another person reflects. One person acts impulsively and the other one responds intentionally. That's the differences, right? Each situation, if you are a reactive person, if you have that conditioning, you'll be the reactive, the impulsive, the spiral, right? If you are reacting from a place of intentionality, then you will be the one that reflects, the one that pauses, right? The situation isn't creating the difference. It's not the situation that's creating the difference. It's the internal programming that is deciding whether you react or you respond, right? And this is exactly why doing the deeper inner work matters so much. Understanding your thoughts, your nervous system, your emotional patterns, your conditioning, your core values, your triggers, your identity. Because if you don't consciously choose your pattern will choose your life, right? Mental toughness isn't staying in the arena. Or is it? Right? It's both. It's staying in the arena, but it's how you stay in the arena, right? I think sometimes people believe mental tough people don't struggle, but be honest. Some of the strongest people I know, and I'm one of the strongest people I know, right? The strongest people I know are the people like me. They fall apart, they get hurt, they lose relationships, they've experienced grief, they've failed publicly, they've doubted themselves, they've felt scared, they've wanted to quit, and kept showing up anyway. Not perfectly. I mean, look at, I glitched right when I first started today on this episode, right? Something popped up on my screen and I had to hurry up and shut it down, but it got me shaken up, right? You keep showing up anyway, not perfectly, not fearlessly, but intentionally, right? That's the mental toughness, not perfection, not pretending, not performing, but continuing after the rejection, continuing after the loss, after the embarrassment, continuing after disappointment, continuing after failure. And maybe most importantly, continuing without losing yourself in the process. And I think that's huge. Okay. And that also doesn't mean that you don't lose yourself at all for a hot minute. I do. There are many times today I still will lose myself, disconnect, fall apart, right? Withdraw. But then I get myself back together again. And I do it way quicker than I used to. And every time I continue to practice this, I continue to get better and better and better at it. And I'm able to not just bounce back, but come back bigger, stronger, softer, with more love, more compassion, right? And I do think that's huge because many people can force themselves forward temporarily. And I really want to emphasize that part because that's not sustainable resilience. Right? Sustainable resilience, that requires self-awareness. That requires self-compassion, time for recovery and reflection and support, right? And intentional choices. Mental toughness isn't, I never break down. Mental toughness is, I know how to rebuild. I break down daily sometimes, right? But I also rebuild daily. And honestly, Trailblazers, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is pause long enough to stop reacting from pain and give yourself the space to feel compassion for you. Give yourself the pampering day when you need it, right? Survival mode versus self-leadership. There's a difference. This is where I really want to bring things home for us today. This is a huge difference between survival mode and self-leadership. We've called it self-care. It's not selfish, right? Survival mode reacts. Self-leadership responds. Survival mode says, protect yourself, avoid discomfort, numb the feeling, blame others, shut down, panic, control everything, right? Self-leadership says, pause, breathe, take a breath, right? Observe, get curious, take responsibility, choose intentionally, and listen carefully. To what? To what the internal volume is saying to you, right? Responsibility isn't self-blame either. Responsibility is recognizing your power to choose differently, think differently, respond differently, heal differently, and lead differently. That's where your freedom lives. Not in the controlling part, not in controlling life and controlling others and controlling situations, because we can't, right? We can't. So today I want you to reflect. I want you to reflect and ask yourself. I want you to ask yourself, where in my life am I reacting instead of responding? Right? Some of these questions are just the same every single week. Doesn't it just seem that way sometimes? Where am I reacting instead of responding? What discomfort am I trying to avoid? What patterns show up when life gets hard? Like I said, the pressure will reveal all of that, right? Am I emotionally regulating or emotionally suppressing? And what would it look like to become more intentional under pressure? Because the truth is, trailblazers, my beautiful trailblazers, mental toughness isn't becoming colder, right? It's become, or harder, right? It isn't about becoming emotionless. It isn't pretending nothing affects you, right? Some people are just like, yeah, I'm done with that. Nothing affects me anymore. That's not it. It's not, it's learning how to stay connected, right? While life is testing you, because it always is going to be. It's learning how to feel deeply without losing yourself completely. And it's learning how to create your results by design instead of reacting by default. So as always, I thank you guys so much for joining me for another amazing episode of Unpacking Brain Drama. If this episode resonates with you, and if you want to go dive deeper in with me, definitely DM me, reach out to me any way, shape, or form. You can find me everywhere. PratitiGetsResults@gmail.com is where you can email me, share this with somebody who might need this reminder today. And as always, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And remember, your awareness creates your power. Your thoughts create your emotions. Your emotions drive, fuel all of your actions, all of that behavior. That's what creates all the patterns. And your intentional actions create the life you experience. Okay? Until next time, Trailblazers, keep leading your life by design and not by default. Love you guys.